Join me, 48 Hours correspondent Erin Moriarty, on my podcast, My Life of Crime, as I take on true crime investigations like no other. This season, I'm looking into the labyrinth of crime and secrets within families. I'm cutting straight to the evidence and talking to the people directly involved, including investigators and the families of victims. Listen to My Life of Crime with Erin Moriarty wherever you get your podcasts.
Inspired by the life of the savvy and ambitious Colombian businesswoman Griselda Blanco comes a new Netflix original limited series. Griselda tells the story of a devoted mother who, with her lethal blend of charm and relentless savagery, creates one of the most powerful cartels in history. Witness Sofia Vergara's captivating transformation into the godmother of the underworld. Griselda, streaming January 25th, only on Netflix.
A note to listeners, the following podcast contains content that may not be suitable for all audiences.
And so then he pulls around to the very back of the school, kind of like a service entrance where trucks would come in. And he pulls in, there's a gate shut. So he pulls up to the gate and he turns to me and I'm like, you can't park here. And he looks at me and he goes, I'm going to rape you, like that. And so I'm like, fuck you, you know? And so he grabs my throat. I freaking stick my thumbs in his eyeballs. I'm just fighting him, but he had so much upper body strength. He was so much stronger than me. And then as this is happening, a classmate is walking by the car. So Roy freaks out and sits up real quick and tries to act normal, right? And I'm just laying on my back, looking up at him, and out of my mouth comes, why are you doing this? Don't you know we're all connected, you know? He went down to Tony's on the pier and called up Bittaker and said, oh God, you know, I screwed up, we got a problem, you know, she got away.
You are listening to Partners in True Crime. We are your hosts, Rob and Cindy Dorfman.
Lawrence Bittaker and Roy Norris prowled the streets of Redondo Beach for unsuspecting victims in the late 70s and early 1980s. Their tactics of picking up young girls hitchhiking and offering them drugs and gifts enabled them to brutally rape and kill up to 5 victims.
Laura's intensive investigative work, talking to the 2 serial killers before they died, revealed a couple of surprises. One was Dina Moody, who we spoke to before, and who was Lawrence's prize, who he wouldn't dare kill. Then, Laura found another young girl who happened to escape a brutal rape and killing from Roy Norris, but there was a catch.
KRISTIN Messinger was 15 years old living in Redondo Beach, California in the 1980s. In broad daylight, KRISTIN was picked up hitchhiking by Roy Norris. Roy tried to rape and kill her, but somehow she escaped. KRISTIN went her entire life not knowing that the people she escaped from were the TOOLBOX killers, until Laura called her and told her so.
We have KRISTIN on the podcast today to tell us her incredible story.
Thank you so much for joining us today.
Yeah, thank you very much.
We're very excited to have you. Your story is incredible. I appreciate you retelling it to us because I think people really need to hear it and be aware of how close you came to being one of the victims of this horrific killer.
Yeah.
So do you want to just jump in and tell us what happened? And
tell us
a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, sure. So I think what's kind of interesting about my story and like forgiveness, it's actually been a real spiritual journey for me. And it's not very sensational for television, in my opinion. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But as far as like a personal journey, it's been amazing. So anyways, I grew up in Redondo Beach, California. And I was born in 1963. And then it was the summer of 1979. And I had been living up in Washington State, but my sister was graduating. And I had just come back down to the beach. And I was with my parents at their home. And so I guess I was 15 at the time. We didn't live far from the school that my sister was going to be graduating from. It was probably about a mile. My parents and sister had gone ahead or something. And so I got dressed and left the house. Maybe I was wearing heels. I'm not sure why, but I decided to hitchhike there. And, or maybe I was just being lazy. I don't know, but I hitchhiked a lot. You know, we all did. Back then it was kind of a common thing. So anyways, I stuck my thumb out. So Roy Norris picked me up. I didn't know who Roy Norris was at the time. And so, you know, this guy picks me up. From what I remember, he kind of looked like somebody from the show about the advertiser guys. I'm drawing a blank. But anyways, he just had that look of kind of nerdy, horn-rimmed glasses. You know, he looked like a businessman kind of, and he had all these rings in a case. So he moved the rings. I got in, sat down, and we're making small talk. So then as we get close to the school, which was really quick, again, it was just like a mile, I go, oh, hey, you can let me out anywhere here is good. And so then he says, oh, I'm going to go to this thing too. And I thought, oh, that's weird, you know? And so then he turns around in front of the school where all the parking is, and he speeds up. And I'm like, what are you doing? And so then he pulls around to the very back of the school, kind of like a service entrance where trucks would come in. And he pulls in, there's a gate shut. So he pulls up to the gate and he turns to me. And I'm like, you can't park here. And he looks at me and he goes, I'm gonna rape you, like that. And so I'm like, fuck you, you know? And so he grabs my throat. I freaking stick my thumbs in his eyeballs. I'm just fighting him, but he had so much upper body strength. He was so much stronger than me. And I probably weighed 115 pounds at the time. And, you know, he was probably closer to like 180, I would think, you know? So he completely overpowered me, and we were on like a bench seat in his car. So he had managed to push me all the way down. So I was lying flat on the seat, and he was choking me, and I'm fighting. And then like he had choked me, I guess, so much that I was just losing consciousness or whatever. And then I just remember this beautiful light tunnel opening up. It looked like, I don't know, butterflies or little sparkles of color, very peaceful. And I'm like, oh, wow, I'm going somewhere. I'm going somewhere. I go, I guess this is it. It didn't feel like, oh, I'm dying. I just felt like I'm going somewhere else now that I've never been before. And here I go. Then as this is happening, a classmate is walking by the car. So Roy freaks out and sits up real quick and tries to act normal, right? And I'm just laying on my back, looking up at him, and out of my mouth comes, why are you doing this? Don't you know we're all connected, you know? And like other things came out of my mouth too, which I would love to remember.
Wait,
like maybe hypnosis or something. Because I can't remember. It's like, because I did not think the words that came out of my mouth. I did not think them. They came out of my mouth, and then I listened to them. So I'm listening to these words for the first time. I'm looking at Roy. He grabs the stick shift to pull it into reverse, and I felt something and ran. I'm laying flat on my back. The windows half open, maybe at best, the car door window. I feel something grab me by the back of my clothing, back of my neck, and just whipped me out of the car like I was liquid. And it didn't hurt, you know. I just I was literally grabbed and pulled out of the car, and then I just kind of rolled onto the cement, and Roy took off like a bandit, you know. The weird thing is nobody was there, so nobody pulled me out of the car. Then here I am left as a 15-year-old to try to process all this. And it sounds like such a crazy story, and people say, oh, you know, you're hallucinating, this, that, all these explanations. Nothing ever satisfied me. So, you know, over time, I've kind of, you know, gotten more into quantum physics, and it started with metaphysical, got into quantum physics. And now I understand how it could be completely possible if there are things like multiverses and so forth and so on. So I just find it quite interesting that I haven't been able to find anybody else with a story like this. I look, the closest thing I can find is people that have NDEs that change their life, you know.
Can you do me a favor? Can you just tell me, I've had experiences similar like this where I felt a force push me or protect me or hold me back. Yeah. And it's happened to me several times. I have had NDE when I was a child. So I'm very open to
did
that
you
stuff.
really?
Yeah, I was like three years old.
Cool. Can you tell me about it?
Yeah. No, I
Go ahead.
the water, when I grew up on Long Island in the 70s, and the water was bad. And I was about 3 years old, and I got typhoid fever, and they had to ship me on a helicopter to Manhattan, and they told my mother I was going to die. That was it. And my grandmothers were both very spiritual and both very connected to the other side and very psychic, both of my grandmothers. And that night, the doctors came in and they were all like running around me, and they told my mom, that's it, she's going to die, that's it. And they pushed everybody out of the room, and I was dead for about maybe 10, 15 seconds in that time frame. And when I woke up, I told my mom, I said I could see all the doctors around me and everything, and I could see everybody running around in the clock, and I told her what time it was on the clock. I was only 3, so she was completely freaked out. So that night when, I went to sleep, and they said to my mom, like, that's it, my parents were freaking out and everything. And my grandmothers both did, we didn't know what they were doing at the time, apparently. My mother didn't know, but they were both doing like Reiki energy on me all night long and like praying.
Cool.
And I woke up the next day, and I had like 99% of my kidney function back, and knock on wood, have never had any issues again. So
your grandmother and mother like did Reiki and healed you energetically.
Yeah, through God, of course, through the other side, And my whole life has been like that. I've had these experiences that I could never understand. When I was a teenager, I had the same things, like weird experiences that I could feel someone holding me back. Like, for example, I was living in Las Vegas. I was 18, 19 years old. I went for a job interview, just for a secretary job. I was under 21, so I couldn't get a real job at the casinos or anything because I was too young. And so I go to I answer an advertisement, because back in the 90s, there were newspaper advertisements, right? So I go there, and I pull into the parking lot, and it was at a hotel. And I was like, that's odd that this, job interview is at a hotel, but I'm in Vegas. Maybe that's what it was. Just about to get out of the car, and I felt this. I don't even know. It's the crazy. I get goosebumps even saying it. But someone put their hands on me and screamed, "No, no!" And I was like, "Okay." So I didn't get out of the car. I drove back to the house.
Now, did you hear the no in your head?
I heard it outside of. It was like in my ears. It's like I heard it.
You heard it through your ears.
I heard it through. Yes, like somebody screamed. I literally thought someone was in the car with me. Like someone screamed no, like really, really loud. And I was like, what is this? So I go home. 2 weeks later, on the news, the place that I had gone for an interview, a man was taking the young women that were coming for the interviews, chaining them up and selling them into sex trade. So you see.
Wow, good job. Wow.
Well,
so you escaped too, man.
Dude, like that stuff is scary. So can you tell me again, when you were in the van with him? That's what I want to get back to. Yeah, when you were in the van with him.
Car.
Oh, when you were in the car. Okay.
This was just Roy.
Just Roy. Okay. So when you were in the car with him, when you were going through that spiritual experience, you said that you said something that came out of you, but you didn't know what the words. Can you repeat that for me?
Okay. All I can remember specifically is, why are you doing this? Don't you know we're all connected? So those are the words, but I know there was other words, but I was so shocked. I'm like, okay, because remember, I'm the one that said, fuck you, blah, I'm going to kick your ass. And I kind of did. I gave him a black eye. I mean, I found out later. See, but and that's the crazy part, that all this comes later. But I mean, I was such a angry little, I'm going to fight you to the death kind of person. And then to be laying there and have all these beautiful, beautiful words coming out of my mouth that I'm hearing for the first time, I was just dumbfounded. I mean, I was, like you said, when you hear somebody grab you and say no, you're like, what's happening? It's so wild.
It's crazy. It's crazy. And it's coming from outside you. You hear it. It's not like it's in your head.
Well, right. No, this was, though, whatever the energy was using my mouth to speak words, but I wasn't thinking them.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Sure.
Yeah. Because I think about what I'm going to say and then I say it, and that's not what happens.
Right. Right.
But anyways, okay, so then going on, like, it's because it's so interesting how I get to have this experience. And then after this experience, I was kind of wild, and my parents had thrown me out, basically. So I was living on my own. I didn't have TV. I didn't read the newspaper. I didn't know that these guys were out raping, killing women all summer long and then being tried at the Torrance court, right up from where I was living, right? And so I had no clue. And I had never really even heard of the Toolbox Killers, really. And then I get a message, however many years ago, it's been now 4 or 5 years ago, and a Facebook message that says, hey, were you a victim of a crime in 1979? And I'm like thinking, well, when did that thing happen, you know? And I wrote back and I go, no, I wasn't a victim. And I've never felt like a victim either, ever. I don't feel like a victim.
Well, you fought back. You fought back. That's why you don't feel like a victim.
Right. And two, something interceded to help me. I mean, how, and why didn't they, you see, and do you ever feel this way? Why was I helped and not those other girls, right?
Exactly.
That's heavy. That's hard to figure. That's hard because I'm nothing special. I'm nothing worth saving compared to those other girls. You know what I mean?
No, I understand what you're saying. It's survivor's guilt. Yeah.
Yeah. And so then I wonder, like, oh, well, maybe it's my future self that came back, or I don't know, right? I don't know. You don't know. So anyways, then I get this message from Laura and I'm like, well, no, I wasn't a victim. She's like, oh, right. Yeah, you got out the window. And I'm like, who is this? Like, how do you know this? You know? And I had made a police report at the time, you know, that I was attacked. And they seemed to be really interested in the rings. Oh, there was rings. Oh, like, because somehow they knew about these rings. And then that's all I ever heard. They never contacted me. I never heard a peep from the cops or anything like that.
So they never came back to you after the fact and asked you to identify anybody?
No, nothing. And I found out later the reason for that, which, I mean, again, I feel so lucky that I didn't have to go through that horrendous trial. I mean, I think that would have screwed me up.
Yeah.
I think if I had to go through that trial,
forget it.
I'd be a basket case.
No, that
I'd
tape.
be all screwed up, man.
That tape was awful.
I mean, instead, I would have had to deal with that as a 15-year-old. And instead, I get to deal with this as a grown adult, you know, and it's such a different thing. I mean, I'm just so grateful I didn't have to go through that trial.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason I didn't was because they were trying to build a case against Bittaker, and they didn't want Roy to look like a bad guy out raping girls on his own. So they didn't really want to talk about me. They were trying to build a case saying, oh, Bittaker was the mastermind and Roy was just the little follower, you know? And it's just like TV, right? You got to build a case. You got to tell a story.
Right.
So that's the story that they told.
Wait, we lost you. Hold on. We lost your audio. Can you hear me?
I can hear you fine.
Yeah, we lost you. Your audio is not working. Ugh, what is that?
I don't know.
Did you hear that? All right, let's try again. Do it again.
Can you hear me?
I can now. That was bizarre.
Oh, okay, now I can hear you.
That was very bizarre.
I saw a little bar move on your thing and then I couldn't hear you.
Did you hear that weird sound?
No.
I don't think she did.
That was freaking creepy.
We heard a very...
Sounded like a demon.
Maybe Bittaker's getting all upset about something. Maybe it's Roy.
I don't know.
I can hear you now, though. Can you hear me?
Yeah, and you know what? We've interviewed a million people. I've never had that happen before.
But now you're much quieter. Can you turn your volume up any?
Yeah, hold on. Is that better?
It's still not very... It was so much louder before. And my volume's all the way up.
So is mine.
Yeah.
Weird.
It's weird. All right. Okay, well, let's go to...
Can you hear me at the same volume?
I can hear you.
We can hear you fine.
Yeah, you're good. Can you hear me?
Okay. My hearing isn't super great. I'll just try to be a good listener.
Okay.
Okay. So where were we?
You were talking about the trial, and you're talking about how they were making Roy sound.
I'm so grateful that I didn't have to go through the trial. And so then Laura, you know, it starts telling me little things. Have you read any of her book?
I've read...
Did you get to read my chapter?
I haven't read her book. I've read all her research. I've read tons and tons of her research, but I have not read her book yet. But no, I did not read her chapter on you.
Yeah. So, I mean, that was so interesting. Like, and she had been telling me little things. But basically what I found out, just in a short summary, so after Roy dropped me, or after Roy split from the school, he went down to Tony's on the Pier and called up Bittaker and said, "Oh God, I screwed up. We got a problem. She got away." And so Bittaker had a couple girls in his room up in the valley, and he's like, "Okay, Roy, should I bring my toolbox?" He goes, "Yeah, bring the toolbox." So then, this is probably about 45-minute drive from the valley to Redondo. So he gets there. There's drinking and talking about it, and Roy's all beat up, like he's got a black eye, he's all scratched up. I mean, I really gave it to him, Bittaker's basically like, saying, "Okay, well, we got to go get her." And Roy pulls out my car keys and that was one thing that made me nervous, was I knew my purse was still in the car. I couldn't remember, so instead what they did, they go, "Okay, it looks like they don't even live here. She's probably from out of town. Let's just go back." And they went back to the girls that they had waiting for them in the valley and kind of forgot all about me. But, then, which is, and then weirdly, their hunting ground, I was living right there. I was roller skating. Roy roller skated. I worked at a Dunkin' Donut for a while. They would go into the Dunkin' Donut. It's just kind of crazy how our paths never crossed again. So then, I'm just going on living my life with this kind of strange experience that I had that I'm always trying to explain in my mind. Then, some 40 years later, I get with Laura and find out this whole other part. But what was always really interesting also is that, I never had to forgive Roy for what he did to me. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. I'm just amazed.
I never
at the
had
story.
to forgive Roy. There was nothing to forgive, kind of thing. I absolutely had zero animosity to him. And it was something because I understood that the good and the bad is all in a duality and it's all the same. He was vibrating really low and I was vibrating somewhere else. But I couldn't judge him. I couldn't hate him. I wasn't even really afraid of him,
Yeah.
So, that's such a cathartic thing that I've been able to carry into other relationships. What am I going to hold resentment to somebody? What is that doing for me? I don't have resentments. I think it really healed me moving forward, that I don't have to hold grudges. And if I find myself holding a grudge, I find a way to heal that,
That's amazing.
So, and then I find out all these horrible things that they did to these girls. It's a lot to process, but at least I could do it as an adult.
Yeah, I was going to say is that you did all this self-discovery on your own. Did you have any help, like a therapist or anything to kind of guide you?
I did have some therapy right along the way, but not really dealing with that issue. I think what I did was I started probably in the 90s, I started reading metaphysical books. And then that's kind of what led me down the path to feeling like, not that you ever have answers, because we don't know, but it just gave me such great comfort because I was raised in a church. So I was raised very religious. And so at the time, that's, these religious symbols are confusing. But I knew it wasn't a religious experience what I had. So I had been to the church and I experienced religion. What happened to me with Roy was not religious. It was very spiritual. So then, it's something I couldn't explain and something the church sure didn't want to explain, right? So, it was my own path of discovery, breaking through illusions that I had. And
that's insane. So when Laura came to you, what did she tell you?
Well, she just, Laura just gave me little bits. I don't think she wanted to overwhelm me, but she basically said that she was an investigator. And so she had managed to get her hands on the police record, I guess. And that's how she found me in the first place. But she was just trying to piece together more. And so she didn't give me a lot at the beginning, just little bits. But I thought it was all quite interesting, and two, when I found out she was talking to these guys, I was like, can you ask Roy what I said? Ask him what he heard. What did he hear come out of my mouth? you know?
Oh my God.
But Roy had stopped talking to her at that point because he found out she was writing a book. So I never got that information out of Roy, and now he's dead. So, but Bittaker, I mean, he talked to Bittaker about it because, and I can't remember exactly, but he was talking about what I said. And he's like, have you ever, he goes, do you know what that means? And he goes, I don't even know what you're talking about. Like, it was just so, the words confounded them. Whatever the words were completely confounding to these guys. I mean, it would have been nice, like if those words came out and then they didn't kill all those girls. You know?
Right. Exactly.
That would have been nice, but
exactly.
I guess they weren't ready for that. They had to go be murderers.
Hold on one second. Laura's trying to break on right now. I'm going to send out another ID in a second. Can I?
Oh, I'm on, guys.
Oh, you're on? Okay, great.
Hey.
Hey, Laura, what's going on?
Hey, how are you?
I haven't seen you in forever.
I know. It's been like almost a year.
Are you getting all settled in?
Yes, finally. I'm working in Santa Monica right now.
Cool.
We started already because KRISTIN was on. I didn't want to waste her time. So we already kind of went through what happened to her.
I was going to ask you guys, so where are you guys at?
Yeah. So where we're at right now is interesting because it's when you come into the picture. So she was trying to tell us how you got involved, what you ended up learning about her and how you found her. So can you kind of tell us what that story was?
Well, it first initially, Bittaker had the two girls' last names. There was another girl that Norris approached with jewelry earlier that day, and she ran away from the car. Yeah, so Bittaker only really had KRISTIN's last name, so he kept saying messenger, messenger, and I kept saying, what is her first name? And he's like, I can't remember. So he had sent me the police discovery, and I'd been trying to find KRISTIN for a while, just her first name. And then I opened up the police discovery, and there it was. KRISTIN was her first name. And then I went on Facebook to try to find her, and I see, this blue-eyed, blonde hair girl. KRISTIN popped right up and it said hometown Redondo Beach, and I knew instantly she was the person.
So when you reached out to her, what were you trying to find out?
Well, I wanted to hear her story of what happened the day, she was hitchhiking and Norris picked her up and he drove her behind the school. I wanted to hear, her version of events of exactly what happened. I had thought when I had first reached out that she had known, Norris was, the toolbox killer, and him and Bittaker had went to her house to kill her. I thought she, the police had contacted her and she was like, privy to all this information already. And we jumped on the phone and I forget what you said, KRISTIN. You started asking questions and I was like, oh my God, she has absolutely no idea who these guys were.
Right.
Which sounds like a blessing, actually.
Yeah. Right. That's what I was saying. I missed out on all the, I think it would have been overwhelming to hear all that when I was 15,
Laura, she mentioned that she had said something to Norris that she wanted to know what if he remembered. Did you ask him that?
Yeah, Norris remembered. So did Bittaker. I mean, they remembered, and KRISTIN's version, Norris's version, and Bittaker's version, identical, all three of them.
But did they say anything else that I said?
Norris didn't remember you saying, why are you doing this? We are all connected. He didn't remember that part, but when I said it to him, it sounded vaguely familiar to him. But
what did he think I said?
He didn't remember. He was just, in that blacked out, raped rage type of thing. But both of them, when they recount it, they just talk about, there's pure terror of that day. Because right after you jumped out that window, they went into a frenzy trying to find you. And it was just like a day of mayhem for them, trying to track you down, going to the house, driving all over. They drove up and down, the streets of Redondo trying to hunt for KRISTIN that day.
Wow.
And where were you, KRISTIN, right after that? Where did you go right after that?
Me?
Yes, KRISTIN. Yeah. Where did you go?
I have no memory after that. I remember it happening. I remember vaguely talking to the police, and I have no memory after that.
So you went right to the police?
I don't know if I went home. I don't know.
You went right to the police? You went right to the police?
Yeah, I went to the police. And again, I can't remember if the police came to me or if I went to the police. I don't remember that. I just remember talking to the police,
Wow.
The event itself was so intense, and I feel like I remember it so clearly, but then everything before and after I don't remember,
Yeah, it's trauma.
It's complete trauma. You were in a state. You almost died. He was choking you.
Right.
It's just crazy how you survived twice in that one day. They went to your house
and didn't even know it.
Yeah, had no idea. And they held on to, Bittaker kept her purse and kept it at the motel because she was always a liability. Like, she was always a fear to them.
So he was always, they were always planning to go back?
Yeah. Well, they had hoped she had moved away when they went to the wrong address on Prospect, and the one they went to had a for sale sign. So they were hoping her and her family had just moved away and she was no longer a threat. But Bittaker held on to her purse and the address with the keychain on it because he just wanted to make sure. And even crazier, I don't know if you remember this, Kristen, when Joe Jackson and Roy Norris went to meet up at the Dunkin' Donuts that day, this is the day that supposedly Norris confessed everything to Jackson, which was all a lie.
And how bizarre that they did it in the Dunkin' Donuts where I worked.
Yeah, they went to the Dunkin' Donuts that Kristen worked, and they would have been, I think it was 3 hours apart. You guys would have just missed each other.
Oh my crazy. God, there's so many spiritual alignments, Kristen.
I know. So crazy.
That's really intense. Yeah. Honestly. So Laura, what did he say to him?
Supposedly, Norris said that he felt so bad and he was confessing to Jackson, but it's all a lie. He took Jackson to the next 8 girls that he was hunting in Redondo. One was as young as 13. There was a couple, airline stewardess they were hunting, but it was pretty much these 8 girls in Redondo and Torrance area that he had been stalking at their homes. And he was taking Jackson to go look at these girls and showing them their patterns of behavior, because Jackson was also a serial rapist. So, Roy wasn't overcome with, remorse all of a sudden. No, he was still hunting. He was trying to get Jackson to hunt with him. But yeah, they met at that Dunkin' Donuts that Kristen was working at.
That's crazy. 3 times he could have gotten you.
Mm-hmm. I was living down there. Roy Norris was a skater. I was a roller skater. I skated all the time. It's so amazing that we didn't run into each other again.
It is incredible at the pier, because everybody was at that pier, Redondo Pier, and Norris was always there. He lived 2 blocks away, and for the whole summer of '79, you guys didn't run back into each other.
I know. And I lived on 2nd Street in Hermosa.
Yeah.
Wow.
Which is like, what, half a mile from the pier?
Yeah, that's crazy.
From Redondo Pier,
So when Laura told you all this stuff, Kristen, what did you think?
Well, like I said, honestly, the first thing that I wanted to know was, what did Roy think I said? That's what I wanted to know. I wanted to know all the words that came out of my mouth because I couldn't remember them all. But then I thought, like I said, it was such an intense.
Laura, we had a weird thing happen. A weird thing happened before when she was talking. It sounded like a demon came on the phone. It was very bizarre.
Oh, she was talking about Norris.
Wait, Laura, right when we were talking about Bittaker.
Oh my God.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right. So let's go back to this again. So when Laura told you all this stuff, walk me through how you felt, Kristen, what you were thinking and what was going through your mind.
I don't know. It's just like a lot of information, it's like, but I mean, like, I think it was like I had processed so much already about this guy that it didn't, I don't know, like I had already processed it all. Like, so then to know he was notorious or serial, I think that's when I got confused about why me and not why couldn't the other girls be saved,
Mm-hmm. That's hard.
And you said when he approached you, like Norris looked really square and like a little geeky.
Yeah, totally. Like a total, I was trying to remember, what's that show? Mad Men. He reminded me of the Mad Men style. The show Mad Men, how they wear, he had that look about him, and he just looked like a square, like my dad or something, like not attractive or at all. He
didn't look threatening then?
I don't know. I don't think so. Not really. No, not threatening. Mm-mm. I mean, I'd hitchhiked a lot. I've been picked up by a lot of people, and he just seemed like just any other guy,
Mm-hmm.
So
Kristen took me to the place where he actually attacked her. She took me right to the spot. And I couldn't even believe it when she showed it to me because, even though it's behind a school, it's a complete residential neighborhood in broad daylight where he was attacking her.
It was like he was so in a hurry to do it that he wasn't thinking straight.
Because it was in a car, not the van, so anyone could have seen in the window.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's why he freaked out when Paul Radabaugh, the guy that walked by, and 2, I since have tracked down Paul. He's a punk musician up in Oregon now. But I asked him, I go, hey, do you remember this happening? And he's like, yeah. And I go, what did you see? Because he had walked past the car, and that's why Roy freaked out. And then I think he heard me fall when I was pulled out of the car and rolled. I think he heard and turned around, but he saw the car speed off, but that's all he saw. He didn't see anything else. There was nothing there,
So this energetic force pulled her out of the car, Laura. It's intense. I mean, that's
a guardian angel.
Absolutely, 100%.
Yeah.
And you guys, even my own boyfriend of 7 years does not believe, because he's an engineer.
No.
So it's hard for people to understand. They want to explain it away. And I've tried to explain it to myself my whole life, and I can't. And I'm okay with that. I'm good.
Yeah, I had an experience
when
like
I'm
that.
dead, I'll know. What now?
No, I had an experience similar to that. I was in a car accident, and we hit a pole, and I was in a car with a bunch of people. I was sitting on the front passenger side on someone's lap, and we were all like partying and stuff like that, and we hit the pole, and then I woke up 50 feet from the car, and everybody in the car got hurt except me.
And nobody had seatbelts on, huh?
Nobody had seatbelts on. I don't know how I got thrown from the car, and I missed a telephone pole and a mailbox about 50 feet.
Wow.
Like split it down the middle, landed on the only patch of grass in that area. And I wake up and I'm looking at the van steaming, all wrecked, and everybody inside hurt. And I'm like, and I'm fine. I go, how did I get out of there?
No, Rob,
yeah, that's crazy, isn't it?
it's guardian angels. I totally believe that.
Yeah.
Well,
100%.
it's crazy because it happened twice in one day to you, Kristen. I mean, they were on their way to pull her in the van and take her up to the mountains to kill her. And it's like she escapes out of the car with Roy, and then they go to the wrong address. And I'm actually really surprised because usually Bittaker was like, anal about checking addresses and where he was going. And so for them to go to the wrong address is almost like crazy to me that he would mess something like that up and not check it a million times, especially for like a witness. And it's just incredible. Like you survived both of them twice that day.
Yeah. And I'm still here. Not sure why. Still here.
I think you're here also to tell the story. I mean, this is that's a very big spiritual experience that you had, and people need to hear about that because you're not alone. There's thousands of people who've had experiences like this in our society. They don't want to talk about it.
Yeah, that's the other question I had for you. Have you ever interacted or met anybody that had a similar experience where they've escaped death from someone like that?
No. And I've looked, I look on TikTok, and so, because I look on it, I've tried to find, I've Googled it and so forth. I've tried to find somebody that had a similar thing. And the closest, like I said, is I get the stories that I'm hearing on TikTok of NDEs. They match what I went through more than anything else I can explain, even though I don't think a true NDE. I didn't go above my body. I wasn't able to look down. I was just going up that tube. Yeah. So, I mean, it'd be neat to connect with somebody that had a similar experience, but I don't know. Yeah.
Now we met one person that had a similar, they weren't attacked, but they had a brush with Ted Bundy.
Mm-hmm.
Her name was Anne Rule.
Oh, yeah?
Anne Rule. I don't know if you're familiar with her, but she's a famous crime novelist, and she was up in the Seattle area, and she was working with Ted Bundy at the time. What was the place that she was working with?
She was on suicide. Ironically, they were working on a suicide prevention hotline.
And she was working closely with him. And then she later found out, and then when he was actually captured, didn't she contact him?
No, when he was captured, well, no, he was on the run. This is before he got captured. He called her while he was on the run, and he told her he was on the run because they were friends. And he said, the only reason I didn't kill you is because you have blonde hair, and I like brunettes.
Oh, my God.
And so it actually launched her career into the crime world, and she wrote I think she's written over 80 books. She's passed away since, but she really was for her whole life was just PTSD from that. I mean, here is Ted Bundy, sitting next to you for months, being your friend.
Right.
And it's...
Yeah, that's wild.
It's crazy. It's crazy. But
yeah,
what you went through is really intense, and thank you for sharing the story with us because I think people need to hear it. And the spiritual aspect of it, if anyone's had any experiences like that, I hope they'll contact us because I do believe that we need to talk about this more for people who go through things like this so we can understand why is it happening to me? why didn't it happen to this person? Like you're saying, there were so many victims. How come they didn't have that happen? You know?
Right. Yeah, I know.
Yeah. Now more than ever, it seems like the spike in violence is happening, and people are getting attacked, and things are happening now. I don't know what it is in the air, but there's a lot of victims being created right now.
A lot of violence in the world right now.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like that people, need to be more aware. That's why we're talking about these things, like be aware of your surroundings, be aware of who's around you, because you could just get wiped off the street. You don't know.
And going back to just the energetic level of it all, like you said, you were about to enter into a dangerous situation, and then there was an intercession, but also just for people to just trust their instincts more.
Mm-hmm.
If you get a bad feeling, don't do it. And, I think you're talking about all this going on because I see it as a, good energy, maybe negative energy, positive energy, fear and love. I think that's what we're going through right now. We're going through this big shift of polarization where you have a battle basically, or a dance of love and fear. And we're trying to figure it out and get back to because I think we've been pendulum swinging as a world or whatever. And, I think we need to get back to a homeostasis, and I'm not sure what's going to get us there, but it feels to me like people are awakening more.
Mm-hmm.
I swear, it freaks me out how many times I hear, we're all connected. We're all connected. We're all connected. It's like I feel like I'm hearing it more and more and more and more, like exponentially more. And so I don't know, I'm getting to hear this, but it feels like it's giving me a message that like everything's going to be okay. It's all going to work out in the end. But that the answer is always going to be love, and love is a higher vibration. Fear is a very low vibration.
Mm-hmm.
So, that's what it all comes down to. The more that people are watching the news or getting scared and fearful of the other side, of the other people, and not realizing that we're all in this together. We're all literally the same thing. We are all literally connected and are the same. And it's through our perceptions that people are seeing these divisions. They're not real. They're not real.
Well, you have an amazing perspective on all this.
Oh my
for
gosh.
someone who's been through what you've been through. So it's kudos to you to sort through all the pain and
been a journey. But at least I don't have any PTSD or anything like that from it, which I'm real grateful for.
Well, I think the main reason for that is because you fought back so valiantly and violently. I think that's part of it where you left it. Whereas if you were passive, because a lot of times these victims just succumb to the
sit
violence.
there,
or they freeze or whatever. I know.
Yeah,
I know.
That's me. I freeze. Like when bad stuff happens, like I just freeze, and it's like scary.
Yeah.
But I also, I think you are protected. Like there's a reason why you're still here. So
well, yeah. Because that's what I couldn't do I couldn't do it under my own power. I could not defeat Roy. I tried to kick his ass and get away. I did. I tried, but I couldn't do it. He was winning. He was getting me. Something interceded and helped me get away from that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, you were tiny little thing.
It was beyond my strength and my power.
Also, to say something like that, like, why are you doing this? We're all connected. That's such a profound thing that a 15-year-old in the 70s would never have said,
I was just going to say that too. It's so profound to say.
It was nothing I had ever said before.
I mean, a teenager, 15-year-old today wouldn't even say that. Like, that's so deeply profound.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's why it didn't come from my brain.
You were just a vessel.
I was just a vessel.
It's interesting that Norris doesn't remember it. Did he just not hear her, or was he just blocking it, or Laura? What do you think?
He just didn't hear any of the words she was saying. Like when he was in the moment, I asked him, I was like, "Do you remember anything she said?" And he was like, "No, I can't remember." He was like, "I remember her saying stuff." He's like, "But I can't remember what she was saying to me."
So maybe that's
Laura, when they were at Tony's, didn't I read at one point Norris said to Bittaker, "Hey, do you know what this means?" What she said. Remember?
Oh, I did that because of you. But no, he didn't remember.
Oh.
We are all connected, or anything. He doesn't remember. I even asked him what he said. He remembers pulling up to you and offering you a ride. But like from that point on, he remembers all the action, but he couldn't remember like any of the words to it, like anything that was talked about in the car leading up to the graduation or anything in there. And he was in that worked up state of he already knew he wanted to take you and rape you. So he was already in that pressure. mode.
Yeah.
So
I mean, you could tell by his actions that he was totally making bad decisions.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, like he was completely focused on what he wanted to do and just made a series of really bad decisions.
I remember when you told your daughter and son-in-law, I remember you told them it was the Toolbox Killer. You called them and said, it's the Toolbox Killers. And then was it one of your nephews or somebody who knew the case, like knew who it was? That's what Michelle was telling me. Somebody they had called, oh no, it was your son-in-law's cousin.
Yeah,
he had mentioned the case.
Addison finds everything. Addison's like a little sleuth. Yeah, so he's the one that pulled everything up. Yeah.
So wait, Laura, I have a question. So do you think it's possible that he, Norris, after speaking with Bittaker and Norris for so long, that when they're worked up in that state like that, could there be like a completely controlled by the compulsions? Is that what it is? Or are they being taken over by
animalistic? Yeah, just like a pure predator animalistic type of thing. Like, predator prey. They're after their prey.
Is that what they explained to you? Is that how they explained it to you?
Mm-hmm.
Like they would see they would see black and they would just go.
Literally almost like black, because they would say like, you don't care what's around you or what's kind of happening around you. You're kind of in that tunnel vision of like, that's my prey and that's what I want. And you look at where he took her, which was like a residential neighborhood. I mean, there were houses that could have looked out their window and seen what he was doing to her and called the cops. But he was still, literally going to rape her and strangling her right there, in this residential neighborhood right behind a high school with a graduation going on.
Yeah. That's so smart.
That's so crazy. It was like broad daylight, you were on your way to a graduation. I mean, what did your parents say?
Why were you hitchhiking?
Oh.
But you know what, too? And my purse was in, but you know what? Roy came off to me like he was stupid. Like I couldn't believe how dumb he was. Like I said, all these actions that he did, I could tell he wasn't. So I thought he was just running off scared and that I'd never see him again. I was a little nervous about my purse, but I honestly didn't think he had a mental capacity that could do any kind of follow-up. What I didn't know is that he had a really smart guy that was murdering people with him that could figure stuff out. So that's kind of,
KRISTIN, did you remember the keychain being in your purse with your address on it?
I knew my purse was in there. What I thought was, Laura, I thought I had an ID, but of course I didn't have an ID. I was 15. But I remember I was nervous because I knew my key and my address were in my purse. I couldn't remember what form they were. I knew the key was in there, but I had forgotten that the address was just like on a keychain. And then we've discussed before, was it 417 Prospect or did I write 417 North Prospect? And I have a feeling it must have just said 417 Prospect.
What's funny is ever since I moved to South Bay, KRISTIN, I have asked people around, that address, the North and the South or the Prospect, and all the locals who have grown up in South Bay, they're like, oh my God, I always get that street mixed up.
Yeah.
I guess it's a very common thing to do. It's a very common street to get mixed up.
But Laura, you said something interesting earlier, like Bittaker was so particular and so precise and so detailed. How do you think he made a mistake like that?
I don't, I'm still trying to figure that one out. Like all the locals say, I've always mixed up that street. KRISTIN, you probably even know more than I do because I haven't been there for that long. But I guess this is a common street. It's very easy to get mixed up between the two prospects.
Yeah, because there's no real dividing line. I think maybe Torrance Boulevard is the divider, but it isn't real. It's not, it is a little bit, there's no thing that says, okay, now it's South Prospect, now it's North, it's just addresses really. It's not real clear.
Wow.
It's again, like divine intervention.
I 100% believe that this story was all divine intervention. All of it, that you were protected by a spiritual being who saved your life and then protected your family and protected you emotionally from this for how many years?
I know.
The fact that you didn't know about it when it was happening right in your neighborhood, it's like,
I know.
I mean, I know we didn't have the phones in the 80s. We didn't watch TV. We didn't have 24/7 news. I get all of that, but people must have been talking about something going on in the area, and the fact
again, I was so young that maybe people weren't talking to me about that stuff.
Right.
You know what I mean? I was a teenager. I wanted to go to the beach and smoke weed and, I was doing all that.
Yeah.
So just trying to survive, working.
Sure.
And I just never came across anything about it. Nothing.
And Laura, did they go to her Dunkin' Donuts, Jackson and Norris? Did they go there?
Yeah.
The one where you
the
worked.
same exact one.
That's crazy. That's 3 times.
Yeah.
But it was interesting though. See, but I worked graveyard shift. I think I probably got off around 7 a.m. And then they came in after that, Laura?
I think it was 10 a.m. they met. You would have just literally ships in the night or like strangers on a train. Like you would have just been leaving. They would have just been meeting. It was 9 or 10 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
And a lot of times it would just be me and a guy in the back at the donut shop. He could have easily murdered me. Easy. No problem.
Oh, God, yeah. A graveyard shift?
Yeah. That's how it was back then.
Yeah.
Of course, I probably said I was 18. They never checked ID back then. But I mean, to have somebody so young running a donut shop in the middle of the night.
So scary. But that was the
so
80s.
Funny.
That's what it was. The 80s was like, a different world than now.
It really was.
But yet, a serial killer was running around Redondo Beach. This is the thing, too, that's so insane. It's just crazy.
Well, what's crazy? You say that, KRISTIN, is because right when he met Jackson, one of the girls he was watching was working at a beauty supply shop. And he was watching her every night of when she closed up, and he noticed she didn't lock the front door. She would go in the back and clean up and sweep. And he could just So she was one of the ones they were going to hunt next. And so they were stalking girls right at their place of business. There was another
girl. Does she know, Laura? Does she know that?
I'm trying to find her. And there was a girl at a Foot Locker, and there was a girl at the Alpha Beta Market. And this was, we went to the Alpha Beta Market right in Hermosa, right?
Yeah. Yeah, it was right there.
Yeah, it's right there. So there's the girl
now.
And KRISTIN, this is the thing that's so crazy, is that look at all of these intersections that you could have seen him again. You were roller skating, you're working in this area, you shopping in this area, and they're hunting in this area.
And I'm still hitchhiking.
And you're still hitchhiking. Oh my God.
Even after that, you hitchhike?
Yes.
You have some serious kahunas.
But I mean, seriously, I was working in El Segundo for a while, and I hitchhiked every morning like a commuter. And I would get picked up by a lot of the same people. Yeah, I know, it's weird. I wasn't scared to hitchhike after that.
We have our own version of hitchhiking now. We have Uber. So it's like you're getting in a car with a stranger anyway. So what the hell's the difference?
Right?
Yeah.
Well, KRISTIN, you're awesome. I want to stay in touch with you. I think you're awesome. Thank you so much for talking to us.
Sandy, thanks. It was really fun talking to you and your husband.
Yeah, thank you.
You guys have great stories too. I mean, it's like this is the last thing I expected to get to hear great stories. Yeah,
that's pretty cool. You're awesome. Thank you. So, Laura, we'll talk later. But KRISTIN, we'll be in touch again. I have other projects I want to talk to you about. I think you have a good voice. You have something to say.
All right, Cindy, cool. Well, it was really fun talking to you.
Thank you so much, KRISTIN.
Take care.
All right, Laura, I'll talk to you soon.
Bye.
I'll talk to you soon.
Bye-bye.
All right. Bye, guys.
Next time on Partners in True Crime.
On this season of Partners in True Crime, The Serial Killer Whisperer, we will be following Laura Brand's incredible journey as she continues her groundbreaking study on serial killers.
Each week, we will release never-before-heard recordings of her conversations with the most notorious killers in hopes to get answers for the victims' families, and maybe that could lead to recovering their lost remains.
Please visit our website where you can subscribe to the podcast, find show notes, and check out extra content from all of our podcasts. All rights reserved. This has been a production of 722 Media Content.